Hey guys, welcome to another vlog here. One of these movie vlogs, which I'm still debating as to whether or not I even want to do these as vlogs. I don't know if I mentioned that before or not. I could have just been thinking I wanted to talk about it and never did. But anyway, as you can see down below, I watched the movie called Under the Skin, which was a movie starring Scarlett Johansson and directed by Jonathan Glazer, whose name was familiar to me when I saw it in the credits and when I was looking it up here for this video. Yet the stuff that he's done is not really stuff I've been all that familiar with, other than some of the videos that he's directed, music videos. He really only has 3 films to his credit: Sexy Beast, Birth, and then Under the Skin. But really, the main thing I want to talk about is just the movie itself was really weird, really kind of had a creepy vibe to it, kind of disturbing at times, and yet I really enjoyed it. Part of it is just because I'm kind of a mark for Scarlett Johansson. I think she's pretty good. She's a pretty good actress. That's what I'm trying to spit out there. From the movies that I've seen of her, I guess I could always click and look on this. The ones that come to mind are the recent Don John that I watched, I guess, a few months ago. And I remember the Island. Trying to get this up on here. Well, of course, there's like all of her involvement in the Marvel movies, the Avengers, and Captain America, and Iron Man, and all that kind of stuff. I want to see the movie called Lucy that she did this year that's not out on, to buy yet. But pretty sure I'm going to get that one only because it looked really interesting. She's in it, and one of my favorite directors, writers, yada yada yada. Luc Besson did that movie. I think I want to talk about him in another video at some point in the future. But I'm trying to look at these any other movies that Scarlett Johansson has done that I have seen. She does a voice in the movie Her, which I haven't watched yet, but I own. Don John, Avengers. We Bought a Zoo. I haven't seen. I just remember that one because we had it at Walmart. The Spirit, I saw that movie. The Island. Jeez. I really have not watched a lot of movies that she was in, so that feels kind of disappointing. Disappointed in myself that I haven't watched more of her work than what I have, considering how much I like her. I know I'm going to be a guy here, and I'm going to show my true colors. I think she's hot. I enjoy watching her in movies just because of the fact that I find her attractive in that way. And even though, like I said, Under the Skin's a weird movie, she shows a lot of skin in it. I think more than she's ever showed in any movie. But anyway, yeah, I like her. She was married to Ryan Reynolds there for a while. I like him. He's pretty cool. But anyway, back to the movie itself, because I had a lot of things I wanted to kind of touch on with this movie. I've said it a million times, and I'll say it a million times in the future, but I'm just not one of these. I'm not a film critic. I'm not a spinstress of the words or anything like that. I'm not good at, I guess, intellectualizing the feelings that I have inside when I watch things, when I read things, when I play games, listen to certain kinds of music. But Under the Skin, I don't know. I was just really intrigued by it. It was really unusual. It was weird. It was far out, man. It was such a... When I posted about it on Facebook earlier after I had finished it, one of the words I used was minimal, because it's very, very much minimal. It's very little special effects. There's very little music, and the music is just really offbeat. It's very dark. I mean, at times it takes place in Scotland, and as I was watching the movie, I was just mulling over the fact that Scotland is one of those places where I wonder how often they even see the sun, at least in that part of Scotland where it was filmed and took place. And one of the most minimal parts of it all was dialogue. And I've watched a lot of movies that don't have much dialogue, not a lot of talking. And usually, those movies don't need it. This was a movie that didn't really need it. It didn't need a lot of dialogue, so it made sense. So I liked that aspect of it, and it gave me a vibe of 70s and 80s movies. Not necessarily just horror movies or unusual sci-fi movies, of which you could kind of sort of say this movie was. It was a little sci-fi. It was a little like psychological horror type. But it reminded me of old movies from the 70s and 80s that have the weird soundtracks, are very quiet, are very dark, are very kind of parsed together, so to speak. I don't know, this just evoked those feelings in me. You know, Under the Skin really seemed to be like that. And then at the end of the movie, one of those little graphics showing, like, I don't know if it was supposed to be the production studio or Glazer's film company or something like that. It was very, very minimalistic. It was one of those weird graphics where you get lights and designs that come together, and it has that just very movie studio template music or sound effects. I don't know. I wish I could play it or show it without, fearing it would get me flagged for some reason, even though my channel is nothing. But you just have to take my word for it, or you'd have to go and look it up online, see if you can watch at least the credits of it, or just watch the movie. I would suggest that you should watch the movie as long as you don't have kids around or something like that, and as long as you're not bothered by, nudity, as long as you're not bothered by what would seem like meaningless, pointless killings. I mean, I guess I should try to explain a little bit of the movie without trying to give too much of it away. But and this is going to lead into another point that I wanted to talk about with this movie, my complaint. But essentially, this movie appears to be about aliens, like actual outer space aliens, not illegal aliens or something like that, but actual aliens on the planet in Scotland. In this particular case, it's never like there's never any kind of a overarching mythology or universe squared away for it. Like, they don't say, hey, these are the aliens and this is where they come from and all that kind of stuff. But they're here, and she is posing as a female, and she's luring these guys that are relatively detached, not married, no major friends, no plans at that very moment. Even, it seemed like if they weren't on their way somewhere where people were going to notice, they didn't show up. She would shy away from them, but the ones that were in situations where they were kind of detached were the perfect prey, and then she'd lure them, seduce them, so to speak, and lure them away to a place where, in what was a weird scene, but I guess it kind of worked, she would walk back across this room, and they would be on their way towards her, and they would be stripped down naked, and then they would start to look like they walked down into a pool of some black viscous fluid, while she walked over the top of the same surface like it was a solid floor. It was a strange scene, but I don't know. Like I said, I guess it was about as sci-fi-ish as the entire thing ever got in those few scenes. And one of those scenes even had probably the most CG and special effects in any scene in the movie, but also one of the most disturbing scenes in the movie happened in one of those little interludes. Otherwise, the rest of it was just like Scarlett Johansson's character driving around the truck, picking up people, taking them to this place, or ending up in these little scenarios. And the point of the movie was, at some point along the line, I guess she started to feel maybe a twinkling of humanity within her. She started to relate or understand, that maybe the people she was doing this to didn't want her to, that it wasn't right for them. And so at one point she frees this guy that she was just about to, like, he had already stepped into the thing, but then for whatever reason or another, it was an interesting scene, her looking at a bug flying against a window. And I think there was something in the building where she took those people to, some sort of a wall or a hole in the wall or something there, because not only did she look there, but this other alien, this gentleman who rode around on a motorcycle all the time, he looked into it after she had released this guy. I wondered if there was something with that. But anyway, in the end, she ended up letting him go, and she kind of went on the run, and then she met this guy who helped her out. And it led to one of the more maybe unintentionally hilarious scenes in the movie, when she comes to the realization that, like, she's going to go through with an actual relation with this guy. Like, they're going to have sex, and she's actually going to do it, as opposed to just seducing and leading the guy into that pool of whatever. She was actually going to sleep with this guy, and they both at the same time basically realize that while she may be physically on the outside, she may look like a beautiful woman, she doesn't really have the equipment down below. Like, there's nothing there. And like I said, the only time in the movie where I just I didn't really cringe. I more like wanted to laugh. And then I was like, what a weird scene. It just seemed like, I don't know. It just seemed like, for me, it was kind of laughable for just a brief moment. And she took off, and she ended up in the woods, and then she meets some other guy who ended up pursuing her as well. And in the end, spoilers, if you haven't already figured it out by now, you're getting spoiled on the movie. The ending is about to be spoiled. She gets gasoline poured on her by the same guy. Once he realizes that there's something wrong with her, her skin starts to peel, and he finds that he has this black substance on his hands. Instead of just taking off, he went back to his logging truck, got gasoline, comes back, pours it on her, and lights her on fire, and she burns to death. And that's pretty much where the movie ended. And that leads me into something that I kind of wanted to complain about. It's not just about this movie, and it's not enough to make me dislike this movie by any means. I really enjoyed it. But I see an issue in Hollywood, I see an issue in movies and TV in general nowadays, even sometimes somewhat in video games, but I don't think the video games are 100% shackled by this issue. But there is way too much of the mystery in movies and TV shows and whatnot that just hang over things, plots and characters and origins and whatnot. I really dislike the fact that so many people decide that they're going to leave a bunch of these things up to the interpretation of the viewer. To me, I see that as being very weak storytelling. Why not just come up with your ideas and explain it in the course of the movie? You don't have to have a guy who's sitting there, in front of a chalkboard writing it all out. You don't have to have hand-holding or anything. But I would have loved in this movie to have known where they came from, why they were there, why they picked Scotland. Why? Some of that may be to do with the author of the book that this was movie was based on. Yeah, I think he was a Scottish writer. I think he wrote it there. But even then, why did he pick Scotland? why would these aliens pick that? Okay, maybe I'm starting to get a little, you know, what would I call it? American-centric or something like that. I know that not all of these things would happen just in America. I do watch a lot of stuff that's American, so it does kind of channel me in that direction, but still, it was like, why were they here on this planet? What exactly were they doing to these people? And why do so many people in Hollywood and whatnot choose to leave so many mysteries in there? I just, like I said, I think it's weak storytelling. I think it's just, I'm trying to think. Every time I sit down to do one of these videos, I tend to get tripped up on words. But I just think that people are kind of taking the easy way out with that. And there's a show that I really, really love. It's in my top 10 favorite TV shows of all time. I will be going back to that series at some point, so I don't want to give away the show. But it ended just a few years ago, and it was a very storyline-driven, mystery-type show with more questions than answers. And yet, at the end of the show, they did their best to explain what was going on in that show. And it made me love the show all that much more. While most people hated the ending of it, or didn't understand the ending of it, or rolled their eyes at it, I loved the fact that they at least explained what was going on. Whether or not that satisfied people, I would rather that a creator of something explain everything instead of trying to leave it up to your interpretation. That's not what I sit down in front of the TV for, to think about it myself. I want the input. I want to know what you are talking about, what you have created, and why. I want to know that. When I want to create things or interpret things in my own way, I'll sit down in front of the computer or, you know, a notebook with pen and paper, and I'll write it myself. I'll create it myself. When you do it and you make something and you put it out there, I would prefer that you explain yourself. By the time it's all said and done, I'd like to know what it was that you meant. I may be in the minority in that, and I don't care if I am. That's great. But I just think that it's really weak storytelling, and I think it's a problem these days. I think that all the ideas, maybe all the best ideas have been taken. Maybe all the best stories have been written. And so now people feel like they can just leave things up to interpretation of everybody else to get around the fact that there's no original ideas left. Or I could just be being cynical here right now. And anyway, enough of that little miniature rant there. I think there had been something else I wanted to mention. Oh, well, I did want to mention how I thought it was interesting that a lot of the filming of Under the Skin was done with hidden cameras, with real people in and around that area of Scotland where it was filmed. You know, and it was done, I don't want to say without people's permission, because obviously they had to have been told about it later on, you know, in order for them to be able to put out the movie. But it was a very interesting way of doing it. I know that there's been a lot of other movies that have done that kind of thing. I'm always really impressed with that, I guess, when they go out amongst, you know, people and film something without people really knowing it, so that they get that realistic feel and not the actor mechanism. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of an interesting point, an interesting thing about the movie. So anyway, I guess that's going to do it for me on this one. Under the Skin, I enjoyed it. I would recommend it to people who like mysterious sci-fi type stuff, but don't watch it if you don't want to see some skin, because, you know, the movie lives up to that term in its name. And it's very unusual, so if you like unusual movies, I would recommend it. So anyway, I guess that does it for me. I'm going to go watch some other stuff now, and I'll see you next time.